It's my 4-year anniversary of using a Ridge wallet, and I couldn't be happier with it. It's also Ridge Wallet's 11-year anniversary, and to celebrate, they're running an anniversary sale. Save up to 30% by visiting my special discount link, ridge.com/skillup. Click the link below or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Alrighty, Rise of the Ronin. Gonna be real with you guys. Not really feeling this one as much as I would have hoped. First of all, do note that I'm recording this in a New York City hotel room with construction literally going on outside my window, so I do apologize if the audio is a little rough on this one. Secondly, let's set the scene for this preview. This is based on the opening section of the game only. Sony said we were only permitted to play up to the conclusion of a certain main mission, and they said that would take around 2 hours to reach. What they didn't provide was any restrictions on the open world stuff you could do in the lead up to that mission. And given that I did a lot of that stuff, this video is actually based on around about 4 to 5 hours hands-on with the game. I'll also note that the footage you're seeing here is not my footage, but it is provided B-roll. That is a bit of a bummer, to be honest. No real reason we couldn't have used our own gameplay here. This is the full version of the game, so it's not a preview build, but as always, there may be a day one patch that makes additional changes or improvements. It's exclusive to PS5, which is obviously where I played it. I played it on performance mode, but there are 2 other modes to choose from, one prioritizing 4K resolution and the other one enabling ray tracing. I didn't test either of those, to be honest, because I really don't care about that stuff when it means that I need to sacrifice frame rate. And besides, I had more than a few instances where frame rate was rather shaky, even on performance mode, so I'm disinclined to try to push this game any harder. The other thing I'll say is that you shouldn't expect a full review from me on the embargo when that lifts, because I'm traveling at the moment. I'll look at what my schedule is like when I return to see if and when I can deliver a full review. At this point though, I will say that I'm not racing to get back to Rise of the Ronin, and that is a genuine shock to me because I love me some Team Ninja. I mean, I was there during the Ninja Gaiden Dead or Alive days. Most recently, I finished all of Nioh 2 and absolutely loved it despite some of its level design and difficulty spike issues. I played a little bit of Wo Long Fallen Dynasty and really enjoyed that too, as it was to Nioh what Sekiro was to Dark Souls. It was still a punishingly difficult Souls-like, but it was faster and more focused on straight action. There was a streamlined simplicity to it that Team Ninja managed to achieve without stripping out any of the depth or complexity that make their games great to play. But level design had, in my own personal view, always been Team Ninja's weakness. They had always relied on a mission-based structure, which is totally fine by the way, but the level layouts within them felt like purpose-built scaffolding rather than truly organic spaces. They were functional and effective for the encounter design that Team Ninja were framing, but they never felt real, more like very video game levels. So when Team Ninja announced that they were going to be taking a stab at the whole open world thing with Rise of the Ronin, I was pumped because I saw it as a chance for Team Ninja to bring their extraordinary combat design skills to a new game structure, one that might allow them to adopt a new approach to level design while also allowing them to provide their own unique spin on the open world formula. 4-ish hours in, I'm not really feeling much love for how Team Ninja have designed this open world. It's very played out and by the numbers. It's a map divided into regions peppered with map markers. Do quests or side quests in a region to increase your bond with the local population, who will reveal more map markers. These activities, by the way, are almost always just towns which are populated by bandits, and you have to kill them all to trigger a cutscene that shows the villagers moving back in, opening up new quests which point you to more towns to liberate, etc, etc. Think Far Cry Japan, and you're very much on your way. It feels like pretty low-hanging fruit from a studio who, when they turned their attention to the Souls-like formula, were able to deliver a whole lot of innovation in core combat design, the immense complexity of weapons and movesets, and a deep RPG-led gear game to enrich all of that further. Some of that combat and RPG depth seems to have been carried over into Rise of the Ronin, but it does feel streamlined in ways that are underwhelming when compared to Team Ninja's typical combat design. More complex inputs have been removed, making the title more accessible to newcomers, but perhaps a disappointment to Team Ninja's veterans. A stance system that counters enemy stances becomes one of combat's central load-bearing pillars, but that does feel a little similar to what we got in Ghost of Tsushima. That comparison could be made of much of Rise of the Ronin, actually, at least based on this first 4 to 5 hours. As I was playing it, I really did feel like I was playing Team Ninja's version of Ghost of Tsushima, rather than a unique game that they themselves had designed from the ground up. The whole thing seems to lack identity or the X factor that have made Team Ninja games great. I want to stress that this is a preview based on the opening hours alone, and I absolutely leave room for the possibility that the uniqueness and innovation that I was hoping for will come later on, but so far Rise of Ronin is leaving little impression on me, and that's really not where I expect it to be based on this studio's track record or how much promise and potential is inherent in the idea of a Team Ninja open world samurai game. While many aspects of Rise of the Ronin do feel quite familiar, it does have some surprising elements peppered throughout it, stuff you probably wouldn't have expected if you haven't played a Team Ninja game before, or even if you have. One of the big ones is a difficulty toggle. There's easy, medium, and hard. You can change it at any time throughout your playthrough. Like most Team Ninja games, Rise of the Ronin is no walk in the park. I played it on normal mode, and while it certainly wasn't as challenging as Nioh 2 or Wolong, I did still find it demanding when it wanted to be, namely during boss encounters. Rise of the Ronin does have a number of Souls-like elements, and I know people often nope out of those based on the difficulty alone. The addition of an easy mode is definitely going to take the edge off things, which should open it up to more players. The other thing that makes it easier is the inclusion of AI companions. I didn't actually know about this prior to booting up the game, but a big part of Rise of the Ronin is collecting companions who can fight alongside you in specific missions. These companions won't join you in the open world, generally speaking, but at certain points you'll be bounced into a mission briefing screen that presages an instance mission, closed off from the open world and with its own separate objectives. It's in these moments that your AI companion can fight alongside you, and they not only fight very capably, but they also attract the attention of the enemy. If you've ever had a summon buddy in a Souls-like, you'll know how much easier that makes boss encounters, and that's very much the case here as well. In addition to that, Rise of the Ronin has a very deep character creator, allowing you to design not only your main character, but also your blade twin, an AI companion who plays a pivotal role in the unfolding story. And that's important because Rise of the Ronin is definitely a very story-led game, and I suppose this is where some of my issues with the game began to creep in. Team Ninja have never been a story-focused studio, and their storytelling has often relied on very spectacle-heavy cutscenes that come as rewards for completing a mission. I enjoyed them in Nioh 2 because they felt like a nice little treat. The game wasn't trying to be narrative-led, so if I could get some flashy razzle-dazzle with cool characters doing cool yokai shit, then sure, count me in. But Rise of the Ronin is not like that. The narrative is central and it's ambitious. It's set during the final days of the Tokugawa shogunate, when Japan was contending with the arrival of foreign powers and determining its fate as either an isolationist island or a global trading power. It is a dense story that requires some proper framing and exploration, and it's full of powerful historical figures who deserve to be rendered with depth and care. So far, Team Ninja aren't really finding their voice with this story. It's still quite reliant on cutscenes that seem to dump a lot on you, only now it's less spectacle and more just fairly bland dialogue. I am playing in the English dub just to see what it's like, and yeah, it's not great, of course. I know it goes without saying, but I definitely do not recommend playing this in the English dub. Please play it in Japanese. An interesting point of comparison for me is that this story is very similar to the one told in Like a Dragon Ishin. There, you played as Sakamoto Ryoma, and here in Rise of the Ronin, literally the first NPC companion you meet and spend time with is Sakamoto Ryoma. It's probably unfair to hold most studios to RGG's standard of characterization and writing, but no one I have met so far has even a shadow of the depth or personality that Ishin's characters had. And the fact that I've only recently played through a version of this story definitely dampens its potential impact. I did have Ishin on my mind a lot while playing through this, but to be honest, I kind of had a number of other games in my head as well. Rise of the Ronin does have a prologue that sets the stage and introduces you to a number of key characters. That's a linear sequence that takes you about 30 minutes to get through, and after that you're dropped onto the open world. A quick look at the map helps you get your bearings and gives you plenty of hints about the sort of experience you're in for. You see a big map divided into regions, and each one of those has a bond rating associated with it. Right now these are all set to 0, and so you head out towards the first map marker given to you. It's a village, only it's been overtaken by bandits. There's no real explanation for why this has happened. I mean, there kind of is in that a nearby NPC just says like, hey, watch out, bandits ahead. But it's really not much, and you get the feeling that Team Ninja are kind of just expecting you to go along for the ride. So you do. There are a bunch of baddies to kill in the village, including one high-level foe who poses more of a challenge. Do note though that full frontal assault is not your only option, and in fact, stealth is almost always the superior option in most scenarios. You have a grapple that can be used to get you up to specific points. You have the ability to crouch and walk softly. You can throw rocks to distract enemies. Hell, walking through tall grass renders you invisible, making for easy assassinations. And while that word is perfectly apt on its own, it also carries special meaning here because, yeah, this definitely felt like Assassin's Creed Japan in much the same way that Ghost of Tsushima did. But Ghost of Tsushima had a much more interesting open world than Rise of Ronin is serving up, at least in the first 4 or so territories that I've explored. It really is a whole bunch of bandit camps waiting to be liberated. I probably cleared, I don't know, 6 to 8 of those in my first 4 to 5 hours with the game. And the instance missions, I was basically doing the exact same thing, except they had a proper boss at the end. In terms of side quests, there weren't a lot and there wasn't much to them. One lady I met wanted me to collect herbs for her so she could make medicine. So that's what I did. I just had to kill some bandits who were guarding it, and that was the quest. That was all it was. A later side quest had me confronting some bandits who were causing trouble over something or other, and so I rode 50 meters to the destination, I killed 3 bandits, and after that, the quest was done. I wish I could point to another type of side quest that really stood out to me as interesting or memorable, but there really wasn't one. Maybe they come later, but 4 to 5 hours with no interesting side content is not great. Outside of that, the only other stuff I found on the map were cats that I could pat for some reason, and banners which I could unlock, which are kind of like fast travel points. That was really it. The B-roll I've been sent shows more activities like a shooting gallery and some glider challenges, but these probably aren't going to be enough to change my mind about this sort of stuff. I definitely don't want to write it off completely, but so far this open world structure and these activities feel quite old, like 1 to 2 generations old. We've all played a number of games that have done this stuff better, with more rewarding exploration, with richer narrative incentives, with better breadcrumbing to engender curiosity, with a more diverse suite of open world activities that changes up the formula, and with less repetition. I was very excited to see what Team Ninja's spin on an open world could be, but right now I kind of wish they'd stuck with their old game structure, because at least that would have avoided the open world design pitfalls that I think we all grew tired of as far back as Far Cry 4. Visually, Rise of the Ronin is a good looking game in its own way. It's really tough because Ghost of Tsushima exists, and say what you will about that game, no one can argue that Tsushima is a looker, an absolutely stunning rendition of not only that world, but also that period, always embracing bold color palettes and sweeping horizons. Even though it's a console generation old, Ghost of Tsushima is still a phenomenal looking video game even today. When it comes to art design, Rise of the Ronin also faces stiff competition. FromSoft's horrific rendition of samurai and yokai exhibits their unmistakable macabre genius, while Like a Dragon Ishin had these incredible faces that look so distinctive and this beautiful and bustling town of Kyo to explore by either night or day. In contrast to all of this, Rise of the Ronin looks quite workmanlike. It's by no means an ugly game, but it lacks the arresting beauty of Tsushima, the stark art design of Sekiro, or the impressive character designs of Ishin. It kind of just gets the job done, and I don't want to sell it short because I don't think it looks bad, but it's certainly got less technical sheen and visual distinctiveness than its contemporaries. Performance was also a little shaky. Like I said, I played it on performance mode, and with the game looking like this, I'd really hoped for a locked 60, but I did not get that. I don't know that this is actually running at 60 FPS, by the way. It kind of looks more like 45 to me with regular dips. These dips were frequent enough that I found them disrupting at certain moments. Furthermore, it seems like cutscenes are locked to 30 FPS, or if they're not, there's some weird jittering effect going on that makes it feel less smooth than it should be. I'm certainly looking forward to the Digital Foundry write-up on this one because I'd really like to see the specific numbers behind some of the stuff I can only report on anecdotally. Team Ninja games have always been centered on their combat, and that's no different here in Rise of the Ronin. I do think though that Team Ninja had very different objectives in mind when they designed Rise of the Ronin's combat. I think a lot of it is about combat that's easier to get to grips with and welcoming in players who might have found previous Team Ninja games to be a little overwhelming. I think they've succeeded here in that combat is definitely more accessible, and I can see this combat being a sort of gateway drug into Team Ninja's other offerings. And I say that because I do think those other offerings are delivering a better high than what Rise of the Ronin is currently delivering. Rise of the Ronin does have classes you can select at the start of your playthrough, but like most Souls-likes, that's a starting point, and after that, you get into the game proper and you can begin unlocking talents and stats as you please, and there's no restrictions on which types of weapons you can use. The weapons will be familiar to anyone who played Neo. They aren't a one-to-one copy, but they do feel very familiar in hand. Combat though immediately differentiates itself by the fact that there's only one melee attack button and a very limited number of inputs associated with that. It really just is a single combo on a single button, but there is the ability to hold that button for a charged attack or press forward and that button for an advancing attack. Beyond that, there are activatable attacks which you can trigger by holding down the right trigger and pressing one of your face buttons. Stuff like a charged attack with your katana or a pole vault attack with your odachi. These do consume stamina or ki, and a lot of combat rests on managing that ki so you can maximize your ability output. That management is done in a pretty familiar fashion as the ki pulse returns, which is nice because it's an extremely badass rendition of it here. After you attack, you get blood on your blade, and hitting R1 at a precise moment will flick that blood off your blade and restore a portion of your ki used in the last set of attacks. The most important thing to keep in mind are the stances. You unlock these as you meet new companions, and your mastery within them deepens the more you use them. You can switch between them very quickly, and you will need to, as most combat is a sort of rock, paper, scissors thing where your chosen stance will be strong or weak against an enemies, so you need to stance until you find the right one, at which point the little arrow above their head will turn from red to blue and you'll do bonus damage. On the whole, it's a good system because it genuinely does incentivize you to use different combat styles, and these styles are all very distinct from each other. This is not minor window dressing for the sake of it. I really did feel like I was using my weapon very differently each time I switched stances. Given that there are 3 of these stances per weapon and over half a dozen weapons in the game, there's plenty here to learn and master. The game is very leveraged into parries though. Most enemies will have an unblockable attack that can be dodged some of the time, but most of the time you do need to get the parry timing right so you can stop the attack and deal a lot of key damage to your foe, opening them up to a power attack. In this way, the defensive aspect of Rise of the Ronin is just as important as the offensive. Parrying isn't as central to it as it is, say, Sekiro, but it is important, and I think you're going to have a tough time with this one if you're not into that parry style of gameplay. All of this becomes even deeper when you start getting into the gear game, which, from what I can tell, is very close to what we got in Neo. A lot of loot drops, not as many as Neo, but still enough that I was regularly opening my menu to assess drops for their potential worth. There are plenty of slots for weapons, armor, and a trinket thing, all of them having different modifiers to increase specific attack or defense bonuses. There are also gear sets which provide additional bonuses. If you've never experienced this gear system before, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by it. It's definitely not Diablo level stat variety, but it's closer to that than your typical Souls-like title is. It gives you a lot more loot to look over, more stats to consider, and more ways to combine them. It also gets you cycling through different sets of gear more often, where Souls-like games typically see you stick with a few core items for an entire playthrough. So it's all there, and it's all good, and like I said, if this is your first foray into Team Ninja combat and loot, then this is going to be a nice introduction, as what's on offer takes the core elements that make Team Ninja games great, while stripping out the things that can make them a little intimidating, like the more advanced combos and movesets. But if you are a fan of Team Ninja games, chances are you like that stuff, as it gives you an incredible skill ceiling to shoot for and a seemingly endless amount to master across the different weapon types. That same level of depth isn't here, at least not based on this opening chapter or what I've seen in the game menus. There's still plenty to enjoy here, and I did find myself having a good time whenever I was in combat, but I was also thinking about the other stuff, and given how much I love Neo for its depth and complexity, it does feel like this more streamlined approach to combat will meet a mixed reception. So a few things to finish up. Number one, a final reminder that this is a preview based on just the opening hours of the game, and that much of what I've discussed here could change later on. Maybe the characters and stories start to come together, maybe the open world becomes a little more interesting, maybe the combat depth is there and I just can't see it yet. Right now though, those things aren't hitting for me quite how I hoped. The other thing I will say is that I can see how Rise of the Ronin is a play to get Team Ninja into the mainstream. Their games are often niche, they aren't huge blockbuster sellers, and much of that is to do with the fact that their combat and difficulty can be intimidating, that story isn't a really big focus, and that their mission-based structure can feel a little quaint compared to the seamless open worlds we're now used to. Rise of the Ronin feels like a response to all of that, offering difficulty options, an AI companion to help out in the toughest moments, a sweeping narrative full of historical figures, and an open world to run around in. I see why a lot of this stuff exists, and I see why Team Ninja are shooting for it, but right now, it feels like they aren't playing to their strengths, particularly on the open world and story fronts. These were always going to be the biggest stretch targets for Team Ninja, and so far it feels like they're playing catch-up rather than trying to deliver their own unique spin that feels authentic to them. I'm still leaving room for the possibility that I'm wrong about all of this, and I hope that I am. We'll find out soon when the game launches on March 22nd, exclusive to the PS5. That's it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you soon. 4 years ago now, well before this video sponsor Ridge Wallet reached out to me, I made the jump to a Ridge Wallet. I saw it somewhere on YouTube since they're big into the whole influencer marketing thing. 4 years later, I couldn't be happier with my Ridge Wallet, and I could never imagine going back to the old bulky leather wallet that I used to use. So that's 4 years for me, but Ridge Wallet has been around a hell of a lot longer than that. In fact, this month they're celebrating 11 years in business, and to mark the occasion, they're running a special anniversary sale giving you up to 30% off your purchase. There's plenty of reasons for Ridge to want to celebrate, mind you. Since the moment they arrived, Ridge have been providing an exceptional product, literally transforming the wallet space, since no one was really using the hard wallet before they came along, but now it's really common to see them around as people have realized just how much sleeker and more durable they are versus the big bulky leather wallets. When I got mine, it was a great excuse to finally get my wallet under control. I tossed out a whole bunch of old cards that I never used, old receipts I had buried in there. It was like spring cleaning for my wallet. But I didn't have to make any compromises because Ridge wallets can hold all of your cards, well, within reason, and they have different options for the back, including a money clip and an elastic money strap. I prefer the strap personally. There's also an AirTag add-on, making it easy to track down your wallet if you left it around the house, or maybe even out of the house if you had a big night. Just like the wallet cleanly organizes my cards and cash, the key case organizes my keys into one sleek little unit. Forget that big mess of keys that stabs into your thigh. The key case will bring order and comfort to that chaotic clump. There are so many different styles to choose from, with new styles being added all the time. I mean, just recently they added a leather range, which feels really nice in the hand, and there's also this really classy and timeless Mopane wood finish, which has a rustic charm that never goes out of style. Ridge always offers a 99-day risk-free trial, meaning that you can send your wallet back for a full refund if you aren't happy with your purchase. But during the anniversary sale window, they've actually extended that to a full 365 days. That is a full year of use with your Ridge wallet, and if you aren't happy with it for any reason, you can send it back for a full refund. Plus, every Ridge wallet comes with a lifetime warranty, something that very, very few products offer this day and age. That is how confident Ridge are that you will not only love your Ridge wallet, but that it will stand the test of time. So upgrade your wallet by visiting ridge.com/skillup, where right now you can save up to 30% off your purchase when you visit that link. That's ridge.com/skillup. This is easily one of the steepest discounts I've ever seen Ridge offer, so if you've ever been interested in a Ridge wallet for yourself or someone else, then now is the time. Thanks Ridge for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.